I believe that there's no need for me to emphasize how many spoilers this video is going to have. This video serves the purpose of summarizing the story and the narrative of Code Vein, so that new players can understand what's going on in Code Vein 2, and refresh veterans of the first games about the key events and how it may tie to the sequel. That said, let's just start with the world and breakpoint of the story. It all began with the Great Collapse, a calamity that struck Earth. With the Great Collapse appeared the Thorns of Judgment. This event changed the world completely, covering the world in an inhabitable miasma, forcing humans to seek underground shelter, and bringing terrible monsters that were called horrors. And this is where it gets interesting, because Code Vein happens in the same universe and same timeline as God Eater, meaning these monsters that the Great Collapse brought, called horrors in the Vein area, are in fact the Aragamis that you fight in God Eater. When this calamity happened, the government, alongside a key character through all of this story, Gregorio Silva, created the Revenants. Vampires, essentially. They were the force to fight the Aragamis, warriors with coded classes and abilities, superhuman abilities that could come back to fight every time they die. But they had two huge flaws. Every time they die, they lose their memories, little by little, slowly but surely, and they need fuel, and that fuel is blood. These two elements combine. You go out on mission without blood, you die too many times, and you become a lost. One of the game's main enemies, Revenants that were lost and enter into a never-ending frenzy, attacking friend and foe, hunting for blood without any kind of real consciousness. It was told to the general public that these Revenants actually won the fight against the Aragamis, and now they needed to address the issue of the bloodlust and the remaining lust that were remaining in the world, which is why the Project Queen was created. Cruz Silva, Gregorius' own daughter, volunteered, for she was the only compatible human to possess the power of being able to channel enough power and blood to supply the lefting world, for that was the purpose of the Project Queen. Try to find a cure for the bloodlust and for the lust, and to supply the blood to the Revenants. Because actually when it comes to the Revenants and them fighting the Aragamis, they didn't win, because they were fighting on two fronts now. The huge flaw that the Revenants had is that every time that they die and they lost blood, they became lost, and they were just not powerful enough to fight against the Aragamis on itself. They would die too many times, provoking for more loss to be made in the process, having to fight now Aragamis and the Lost. So the Project Queen had initially the intention of supplying the Revenants for more blood so that they could stay in the field for longer periods of time without becoming lost, being able to have another fighting chance against the Aragamis. It all went sour when the project failed, and Cruz Silva went into a berserker state herself. This sets the overall narrative that the government told the people in vain. She was defeated by Silva, Jack, and the game's main protagonist, who wakes up with amnesia, not knowing who he is. He killed the queen, but was infected during the fight, so his friend and comrade, Jack, kills him so that he wouldn't enter into the berserk state himself. But the reality is that Silva and Jack didn't want any witnesses to what they were going to do next. Through this, Revenants were never strong enough to fight the Aragamis. Silva thought that when the Great Collapse happened, the rest of the world perished alongside with it, and they were the only survivors. They were losing the fight as well. The Aragamis were too strong. Now they were fighting both the Aragamis and the lusts that were produced during the fights against the Aragamis. While the elite forces can fight the Aragamis, the bulk of the Revenants can't. They become lost. And the elites, like Jack, Silva, or the protagonist, have more to fight than what they originally had to. To prevent this, it was Silva who created the Red Mist, the powerful wall that isolated the people of Vein from the rest of the world. It prevented for more Aragamis to enter Vein, but it also prevented from people to leaving. It was simply put a cage. To accomplish this, they used the corpse of the queen as a catalyst. The queen could not be killed. They took her vital organs and placed them into heirs that channeled her power to create and kept the barrier alive, which is, by the way, the story, that the narrative, or what the world or government wants you to believe, the narrative that you get while starting Code Vein 2. Our friend Jack is tasked with hunting down rogue revenants and keeping an eye on the heirs going berserk because they're holding the power of the body, separated body of the queen. And they are the ones keeping the wall, the red mist, active. Inside, the people are still dying and becoming lost. The provisional government keeps beat up the queen, blood, to provision the people with blood and prevent them from becoming lost. But there's also rogue and criminal factions that operate outside of that, and they scavenge the remaining world trying to find blood pits. These are in fact the vain crews left on the world before dying. Her innocent will is to use her power to prevent more people from becoming lost, from more revenants dying, which was ideally her original purpose. Out of all of the organs that kept the barrier up, there's one that's most important: the brain. Gregorio Silva has it, and he feeds on humans claimed to be protected by the provisional government. You can see him sitting on the throne being supplied by such blood, and if the government handles the supply of blood and blood pits, it's just to fuel this. Once you beat Gregorio Silva, you can lift the barrier, but that only takes you to the initial problem: the Argamis who never left the world. This is such a beautiful world with so many shades of grey. There is no good and bad in here. Would you say that Gregorio Silva is a villain? At the end of the day, he did create the Red Mist, and he did sacrifice his own daughter in the process to be able to make that happen. He is lying to the people, telling them that he's working on a cure, where he's only just in this stalemate of trying to keep the Argamis outside. But it's either that or just be extinguished in the process. When you manage to exit the world, that final cinematic of the game, you will see how gruesome it is to fight against them and how much they are in this peril and state. This is probably what's going to set the stage for the sequel of the game. However, it is to have in mind that there's also the God Slayers that they could probably get in touch with, and there's also that. But then again, the people in Vein believe that they are the only left survivors in the world. Would you also say that the Queen is a villain? She at the end of the day entered the berserk state, that it is killing everyone in the Vein world with the miasma and the lust. But at the end of the day, it is her innocent will that keeps supplying blood to try to keep people alive. Even when Gregorius' professional government it is using that blood supply to keep the barrier alive. It's just a beautiful world, really. And that is what sets the stage for the next game. Next game, we're going to be traveling in time, trying to prevent this from the beginning. There's more things that you'll be able to see on the new narrative for Code Vein, because it seems that there's also new apocalyptic events, but it all boils down to this. Anyways, if you like the content, you like it, super appreciated. Nostal, you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You're in the gorgeous and beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel. You're in Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.